Formula One's race weekend format is under the microscope and the debate is heating up. F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali recently emphasized the importance of evolving the sport, saying, "Things are going very well today, but precisely for that reason we must not rest on our laurels. We need to think about the next step." This statement, made just before the Italian Grand Prix, highlights the ongoing search for the ideal race weekend structure to keep fans engaged and the sport fresh. Domenicali didn't just stop at generalities. He revealed that experimenting with the number of sprint events is on the table, and intriguingly, the idea of reverse grids is also being seriously considered. This is a bold move that could shake up the traditional race weekend format. He also hinted at a potentially controversial topic, the length of races, suggesting that the current 300-kilometer Grand Prix distance might be a bit too long for younger audiences. Domenicali opened the door to discussions about shortening race distances. This is a significant point because it challenges the long-standing tradition of race lengths in F1. Although no official proposals have been made yet, these comments sparked fresh conversations among fans, teams, and insiders at Monza last week. So the big question remains, should Formula One revamp its race weekend format? Is there room for more sprint races? And is revisiting reverse grids a step in the right direction? Our writers weigh in with their perspectives. Randomness isn't the solution. Philip Clearan. Change for the sake of change isn't the answer. But ignoring opportunities to make the sport more captivating would be a missed chance. That's the balance F1's rights holder, FOM, needs to strike. When sprint weekends were first introduced, I wasn't a fan. Having covered many of them firsthand, I still find the format somewhat rough around the edges, despite recent tweaks. However, it's undeniable that sprints offer a far more compelling reason to tune in than traditional practice sessions. Promoters and broadcasters love them, and even most drivers have warmed up to the concept. I've heard whispers that by 2027, the calendar could feature around 10 sprint events annually. Based on what I've seen, I wouldn't oppose that. But what I do dislike is the diluted version of the 3-stage qualifying system used during sprint qualifying. Why not try a single-lap qualifying format instead? This would eliminate the frustrating traffic issues drivers often complain about, as well as the challenge of getting tires into the right temperature window during the short qualifying segments. Drivers' gripes about being stuck behind slower cars or struggling with tire performance are understandable, but also tiresome. A one-by-one approach would provide a pure test of skill and speed. If it works well, it could even be adopted for the main qualifying session. Some of Domenicali's other ideas are harder to swallow, especially the dreaded prospect of reverse grid races. That concept belongs in feeder series, not F1. If you need randomness or artificial gimmicks to make your races exciting, then the core problem lies elsewhere. The focus should be on improving the on-track product itself. The suggestion to shorten race distances is more intriguing, but I'm skeptical of the reasoning that younger fans have shorter attention spans and therefore prefer highlights over full races. Sure, highlights are popular because not everyone can watch every race live, but dismissing Gen Z's ability to engage with 90-plus minutes of live sport seems misguided. After all, football matches last around 90 minutes. Many popular movies exceed 2 hours. And binge-watching TV series is a common pastime. That said, it's worth exploring. For example, the Italian Grand Prix typically lasts about 75 minutes, while the Singapore race approaches 2 hours. Could a shorter Singapore race improve the spectacle? Tradition isn't sacred here. Monaco already runs about 15% shorter than the standard 300 kilometers plus 1 lap distance. However, fewer laps mean fewer chances for exciting on-track moments and limit strategic options unless tire manufacturers like Pirelli supply softer compounds. To circle back to reverse grids, if races feel dull, it's not because they're too long, it's because there isn't enough action on track. That's the real issue to address. Could reverse grids enhance races? Oleg Karpov, I have to admit, I'm a fan of sprint races, but the current format doesn't maximize their potential or add significant value. Buried on a Saturday morning, sprints often feel like glorified practice runs that fade from memory quickly. Take Lewis Hamilton's sprint win in Shanghai. It was briefly noted but soon overshadowed by the main qualifying session. In my view, sprints should close out the Saturday schedule. But that raises a dilemma. Do we really want two qualifying sessions, one on Friday and another on Saturday morning? Probably not. Here's a bold idea. What if the sprint grid was set in reverse championship order, with the points leader starting at the back? It's radical, yes, but it would inject genuine uncertainty and excitement. Could the front-runners fight their way through the pack in a 100-kilometer sprint? That would be a true test of skill and racecraft, rather than simply rewarding the fastest car. It would also give struggling teams a better chance to score points. F1 has already discussed extending points to 12th place to reward more drivers. Why not use sprints to achieve this? Midfield and backmarker drivers could battle for points over shorter distances while fending off attacks from championship contenders. Maybe sprints don't need to happen every weekend. What if they were held once every 3 races? This approach would reward overtaking ability for leaders and offer a fairer shot at points for those further down the order. Traditionalists might hate it, but there's no denying it would add real drama, reimagining sprint qualifying. Jake Boxall-Legg. When it comes to format, Formula One already strikes a good balance between sporting integrity and entertainment. I wouldn't want to change race lengths or the current Grand Prix qualifying format. They provide the right amount of tension without feeling contrived. So, when asked about format changes, nothing immediately stands out, though there's always room for improvement. I used to dislike the free tire change rule during red flags, and sometimes it kills the racing spirit, like at Monaco 2024. But it also kept things exciting in Brazil last year and allowed Alpine to have a standout day. Sometimes these rules help, sometimes they hurt. If I had to pick a format change, it would be sprint qualifying. The 3-stage qualifying format works well, but sprint races don't need to mimic a shortened version of it. Why not bring back the one-lap shootout format, with the order based on Friday's first practice results? Or try something like Formula E's duels format, or invent something entirely new. If more sprint races are coming, let's at least make them distinct and worth watching. This could extend to the races themselves. Imagine capping everyone's ERS power output at 300 kilowatts, with an extra 50 kilowatts available as a push-to-pass boost on top of the planned overboost. That would add a strategic layer. Personally, I'd prefer no sprints at all. I like the idea of a 2-day weekend with one practice session before qualifying and the race. But I realize that's unlikely to be popular with everyone. Why randomizing grids won't work? Stuart Codling. Galileo once said, "This grand book, the universe, is written in the language of mathematics." In today's world, where algorithms shape our lives and digital currencies exist only as numbers, math seems to hold the key to every problem, including how to keep F1 relevant to the TikTok generation. Before 1933, the Monaco Grand Prix grids were decided by lottery rather than qualifying times. Some suggest randomizing grids today could spice up races, but random grids aren't just a gimmick. They would eliminate a key track session that's thrilling because it carries real risk. For the TikTok crowd, maybe that session could be replaced by something absurd, like drivers competing in physical challenges or a custard pie fight. There's also the tricky math behind randomness. Computers generate pseudo-random numbers based on algorithms, which are deterministic. True randomness requires external entropy sources like atmospheric noise or cutting-edge quantum computing. Imagine if F1 partnered with a quantum computing company to generate truly random grids live each weekend. That would be a spectacle. But even true randomness would clash with human psychology. Our brains are wired to find patterns even where none exist, a phenomenon called apophenia. Random sequences can cluster unexpectedly, like flipping a coin and getting heads 5 times in a row. So randomizing grids would cause endless disputes among teams over fairness and methodology, leading to frustration and complaints every time clusters appear. In short, random grids just won't work. Maybe a custard pie contest would be a better way to decide starting positions. What do you think? Should F1 embrace more sprint races, experiment with reverse grids, or stick to tradition? Is shortening race distances a smart move or a step too far? And how far should the sport go to entertain younger audiences? Share your thoughts below. Do you agree or disagree with these ideas? Let's get the conversation started.